Hello everybody, welcome to another reaction video. Today I'm going to react to a semi-old video called Why Skyrim is a Masterpiece. Retrospective analysis by Fusdorf, I think that's pronounced. Sorry if I'm wrong. Well, it's a really long one. It's almost exactly an hour long, so it's going to be a long ride. Well, I have my time, so let's go in with it. Skyrim. The game of my generation. And for a lot of other generations, and probably like the 80s and both 2000s early generation, 90s generation, 80s generation. Probably we can throw in the 70s generation as well, but mainly 80s, 90s and 2000 kind of generation. Oh, 2011. Man, do I want to go back to 2011. What a wonderful year. Wonderful year. Barack Obama was the president. Oh man, that was a president. Anyway, so let's go into it. I mean, Skyrim it sits in my heart. I share Skyrim so much near my heart. You can't imagine. If you not were in my generation or the generation previous and a little bit previous, you don't understand. This game was the game of generation. I mean, now it's kind of like movies today, like let's say like the Lord of the Rings and the Harry Potter and the Star Wars prequel and Jurassic Park when they came out with all the new CGI technology. People were like, whoa, this is amazing. And today when we see a movie kind of like Marvel movies, that sort of thing, we just see CGI and little acting as possible, just action everywhere, and we just sit there like, yeah, it looks pretty amazing, that sort of thing, but it's not like it doesn't have that wow effect that Jurassic Park had in '93, I think it was, and or the Lord of the Rings movie or the Harry Potter movies. There's nothing that can compare to that kind of things. Today, the only kinda, how should I say it, near kind of new experience was when the 3D started to come out, like the proper 3D, like IMAX and sort of thing, that around 2014, 15, somewhere around there, when the 3D technology and all that started to really go out and that sort of thing. So, but when it comes to video games, sure, we have like the Dragon Age Origin and the Mass Effect video games and Battlefield games that looked so amazing, and some of them are really looking good today with stories and like the KOTOR, and I mean there's so many good games, mostly for their combat story especially. I mean today it's really hard for a lot of video games to throw them out, like push them out of the throne, so to say, push them off the throne. Like the only one that I can there was a big debate around 2015 or 16 with the Witcher 3, when there was a lot of debate, is the Witcher 3 capable of pushing Skyrim off the throne of RPGs? To me, no. But even though I would say yes, the Witcher is also a game of generation, absolutely, alongside with GTA 5, back when Rockstar was, they had friendly reviews, just like what you call now Blizzard, so that sort of thing. Nowadays it's just, man, I want to go back. Not like I want to experience my childhood, I just want to delete everything I know about Skyrim and Fallout or even the Mass Effect and just replay them, because yes, they are really amazing to play still, but the feeling back in the days, yes, as Starfield, like yes, it's amazing, but it's not Skyrim amazing, and it's not Witcher 3 amazing. Hogwarts Legacy was this year amazing in my opinion, because that is because we Potter fans haven't had a real Harry Potter games for a very long time. Almost 2 decades feels like. No, I will not cut in the Lego games. No, absolutely not. Not the mobile games either. Like the proper video games. And unfortunately, we Potter fans haven't had a proper Harry Potter fans, but Hogwarts Legacy gave us such an amazing wizard game. So I just feel like, man, why can't we have that sort of thing again? Like with, yes, Hogwarts Legacy, a small taste of that used to be Skyrim when it was released, or The Witcher 3, or the Mass Effect. Oh, I want that feeling again. Sure, Starfield had a little bit of it, but not enough. So I really hope the next Elder Scrolls game, Elder Scrolls 6, is going to have a little bit of that taste back, because, man, I want a game, it doesn't matter, but just a game again where we just feel like, man, Skyrim back in the days, that feeling of a new game, the phenomenon that was the release of Skyrim. Anyway, let's move into it. I mean, I probably talked around almost 5 minutes in. Let's jump into it. I'm excited to see what he has to say. It is a 5 months late video, so I'm 5 months away, but I haven't seen it, so let's go into it. Also, I have to say I'm sorry for the Starfield review. There was one of the cables to the microphone wasn't really plugged in correctly. I really hope that's not the case here, because if it is, I'm going to be mad about it. Maybe it's something with the microphone, it's broken or something, I have to buy a new one. We shall see, we just have to see. Hopefully, it's fixed right now. I will, however, cut right now, because I want to see if it's actually functional with the sound and that sort of thing. Okay, I checked the sound, so there's nothing wrong, so hopefully that goes the entire way. So let's just jump into this. Also, you can see my hair is starting to get real long. Like, I'm trying to do like one of those footballs kind of, I don't know, we're calling it tofs in Swedish, so kind of like that sort of football's hairstyle. I might be cutting it maybe after winter or something, but right now I'm saving it, trying to save as long as I possibly can. So let's jump into it. I'm excited. Don't remember her name, but this music.
Our hero claims a warrior's heart. I tell you the dragonborn comes with a voice wielding power of the ancient Nord heart. Believe that dragonborn comes.
I remember it like it was only yesterday, sitting in my room as a little kid on a cool late summer night with some food and drinks, fully preparing to submerge myself in Skyrim's exhilarating vast open world. After playing for hours straight, I looked over at my clock, realizing it was 12 in the morning, and I had to get ready for bed, as it was far past my bedtime. And so, I did just that. I did this for about 3 weeks or so, and every night before falling asleep, I was giddy with excitement to wake up and do it all over again. Unfortunately, I was too young to fully understand at the time what I was witnessing. A video game that was so anticipated, it sold 3.5 million copies within the first 48 hours of release. Now, that may not sound all too impressive in this day and age. Mind you, this was during 2011. The gaming industry...
Yeah, my computer back in 2011... I think I had a 780, I don't remember exactly, graphic card. Dragon Force, I think it was called. Oh, it was a good computer. It held for a long time. I had a graphic card even up until 2015 or something like that, until I switched to the 1080, I think it was. Yeah, it was around there when 1080 came out. And then after The Witcher 2... 2080, and now I have a 3090. But back then, I mean, the graphic card, it held up. God damn it. Oh, my first ever personal built computer.
Hadn't become the mega entertainment industry it is today. Back then, video games weren't created for the sake of making money and being shit out every year just for a quick buck. They were handcrafted with heart and soul, and most importantly, made with a vision in mind. Of course, there are a handful of exceptions. Sure, Skyrim gets hate now, but back in 2011, this video game was a work of art, and absolutely groundbreaking. Truly one of the greatest video games that had ever been created at that time. I don't think people really comprehend what kind of impact this single game had on the gaming industry as a whole. Skyrim set the...
Every time when I was talking to the youth, if you know who that is, then point through. Talking to modern day youths, I mean, they know what Skyrim is, but they haven't played it, and they just haven't experienced that. Maybe they were too young, or they were born after it. Like, yeah, I understand that argument, but my god, Skyrim, when it came out, oh no.
Bar so high in the RPG genre, in fact. Even in 2023, games are still being compared to it today. And even still, it's difficult for current generation games to live up to the expectations Skyrim set in stone almost 12 years ago. Of course, Skyrim isn't perfect, however. No video game is. But there is a reason it's one of the most played video games of all time, and is still played today by a highly active community. There are only a few select games that have achieved this legendary status and are loved and respected universally by everyone to the point where they are still talked about to this very day. And that is exactly why we are here today. I'm going to take a crack at deconstructing this behemoth of a video game and lay all the pieces out on display for us to discern together. This will not be an easy task, but by the end of this video, you will have a deeper understanding of the talent that Bethesda Game Studios used in the creation of Skyrim. And one last thing, I will be comparing Skyrim to its predecessors mostly, as I feel it makes the most sense to do so, considering it exists in the same series and universe. You'll see later in the video, I'll begin comparing them heavily, as I feel each game did something far better than one another. So without further ado, let's begin.
God, this music. He's probably going to talk about the music. He must. I mean, the music to Skyrim. I can listen it for hours, especially when I'm out walking. It's so calming and awesome. Like, it takes you to another world, basically. He was young then. He was young.
Riding high off the success of The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion and Fallout 3, Bethesda Game Studios began gearing up to release their latest action role-playing game, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, with The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, Oblivion, and Fallout 3 each being smashing hits, along with earning Game of the Year awards. BGS knew they had to persevere and continue satisfying fans with stellar open-world RPGs. During the production of Skyrim, BGS had one goal in mind during development, and they based all game mechanics around this one philosophy: giving the player absolute freedom. Do you want to be a deranged psychopath and murder an entire village? Go ahead, excluding children. Or do you want to be the noble hero that saves Skyrim and Nirn from all its evils? Or just be both. That's right. In this game, you can burn down the entirety of Whiterun, then head straight to General Tullius and ask to be recruited into the Imperial fucking Legion. And the motherfucker will accept you? We'll speak more on this later. Trust me, I have a few unkind things to say about this aspect of the game. But essentially, with the player freedom philosophy in mind, you can do almost anything in a game with little to no repercussions. which, to my point, is a major factor as to why Skyrim triumphed with a casual gaming audience. In essence, BGS dumbed down unforgiving RPG mechanics in favor of more forgiving mechanics, making the game a custom for a broader audience. This is argued by hardcore RPG fans to be a terrible design choice, and I agree on many levels. Whether this change was intentional for its purpose or not, this was the effect. But as I said, we'll touch on this more later. The date was December 11th, 2010, when Skyrim was, What the? When it was first... No, that's not it. What the hell?
God damn it, where the fuck is the original trailer? Finally, holy shit.
By the 9, how many re-releases does this game fucking need? The date was December 11th, 2010. This was the day Skyrim would be shown to the world for the first time, and a release date.
I watched that live and oh my, when the monks came forward and started singing, oh my god, why can't we have that sort of thing? Oh, I'm a little bit sick and tired of this digital live shows they are doing. Sure, it's easier and less how should I say it, expensive for the companies, but this is such a... I wish I was there 2010 Video Game Awards and that sort of thing. And the E3 and that sort of thing, that's been completely gone right now. Except for digital platforms. Like, I miss that. Before the virus, the pandemics and that sort of thing.
It would also be given 11/11/11. This announcement trailer would be...
People, you don't understand how important that thing. Even when when discussion of Skyrim came up for... When I'm talking to people who are not gamers, older generation, when we talk about Skyrim, they probably have heard the word, but they don't know what it is. When they ask, well, yeah, we say it was a game that came out in 11/11/11. At the moment you say that, they just, wow, 11/11/11, genius marketing.
The first domino to fall and spark a year-long hype train that would garner far more attention to the unreleased title.
Yeah, I mean, 2010. Let me see now. I think I was in high school. I went out of high school 2014, so this would be the kind of like the last year of what you call middle school, I think it was, and I was about to. No, wait a minute. Yeah, this was my first year in high school. In Sweden, called gymnasiet. 20, yeah, it must have been around there. So I mean, the talk of Skyrim. I need to calm down, but oh my god, like we couldn't stop to theorize what the story would be and how would we play it. We even started to talk about Oblivion, what we're doing. Sorry, I thought there was someone calling, but no. Yeah, where was it? Yeah, like we were talking about Skyrim constantly for an entire year almost, and I can promise you, the teacher that we had, they hated this game. They absolutely hated this game before and after it was released, because the students just didn't want to listen to whatever the teachers were saying. Like in school, we just didn't give a single goddamn penny what they were saying or trying to teach us. We just Sky.
The build-up during this time was absolutely immense. In 2011, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim was the most anticipated game on the planet, and the following trailers were unconditionally off the chain.
Why don't they make a movie? Why did it movie? An Elder Scrolls movie.
They kept furthering the hype. People were snatching Oblivion and Morrowind copies off shelves left and right to catch up on the lore, if they were one of the few unfortunate souls who's not already played the games. But during QuakeCon's August showcase is when the hype reached a boiling point. Todd Howard sat down on the big stage and played Skyrim for 40 minutes straight, and my god, was it breathtaking. Where have I heard that before? Anyway, the gameplay demo went about as well as you'd expect. People were flipping the fuck out. You have to think, an RPG did not exist at this time that looked or sounded this excellent. And to couple with this, the fantasy world in which this game took place was absolutely stunning. Arguably the most important aspect to a Bethesda game is the world in which you play in, and by the looks of this gameplay demo, it appeared that they nailed it. So now, it was finished. All there was to do was to wait, and wait, and wait. Meanwhile, fans were making parodies of the hysterical excitement over this game, and they were willing.
Harry Patris, I think it was called. I mean, that song and the animation is just fantastic. Absolutely love that video. But yeah, the waiting. Oh, the entire summer was so slow. Oh, this November couldn't come any slow. It was such a slow summer. Oh.
Willing to almost do anything to get what they wanted. Then it finally happened.
Oh.
I put out some cardboard boxes and we thought that's a suit of armor to us.
I didn't pre-order the game.
You don't see this sort of stuff anymore. You probably do here and there, but because of the digitalization, you know, even though I mostly preferred it, but back then we would stand in line, even for books. We stood in lines for them, and there was so much emotion and anticipation and just happiness, joy, like come together. Like it didn't like race didn't matter, religion didn't matter. Just the game. We all were just united for the game. But like,
Skyrim!
On November 11th, at 12 a.m. in the morning, Skyrim was unleashed into the world. And from this day forward, every gamer knew what Skyrim was and is. It quickly became the most played game of 2011 and one of the highest grossing games of all time, seamlessly overnight, earning $100 million within the first 24 hours. Alongside this, it was one of the most critically acclaimed video games to ever hit the market, whilst also earning Game of the Year for 2011. After listening to this, you probably get the hint. Skyrim was ultimately a commercial success. But does that mean the game was actually good?
I didn't went out and buy it, unfortunately, because I was at school, and also the game came out pretty late, like almost, well, I don't know if he said it was released in an American time zones when around in the morning. I think that's around pretty much bedtime in Europe. So unfortunately, we in Europe was unfortunately I have to wait until the next day. I think it was December 11th. I don't remember if it was a school date. I don't think so. It was a long. I mean, it's 12 years ago, so I can't remember that. But I got it from my brother. He actually went out and bought it, so I got it from my kind of like an early Christmas present. So I love him for that. Absolutely, I love my brothers and that sort of thing. I have two older brothers, and it was my middle brother who actually bought it. And let's see now. How old was I when Skyrim came out? I was 17. Yeah, late 16s or 17. Around there I was when Skyrim came out. But I did went out for and to people. I did went with people, some friends who were going to buy the game in stores and sort of thing, and there were lines.
I mean, sure, it may have been very successful, but that doesn't mean it was a good video game. Even different media outlets giving it a perfect rating doesn't necessarily mean all that much in the grand scheme of things, seeing as some outlets gave Battlefield 2042 a perfect score. So, that leaves the question, was Skyrim overrated?
Yeah, not really.
First, to answer this question, we must take a look at why Skyrim was so successful in the first place. What events led to Skyrim's meteoric rise to fame? The simple answer, and a large chunk of the reason simply put, was the marketing. You see, there was a huge difference between Skyrim's marketing compared to all the other Elder Scrolls entries. Skyrim had, and still has, one of the most well-known branding images in the gaming market. What do I mean by branding image? Well, when you think about any other cultural icons in video games, television, or media in general really, there is always one thing in common. They either have a highly memorable character, song, moment, or even all three to represent their brand, or otherwise known as advertising. For example, everyone knows who
Dragonborn, obviously, the symbol, the dragon banner, the imperial signal, and of course the theme song, the Dragonborn. Is it just called the Dragonborn, if I remember correctly? Those Dragonborn, the protagonist, the symbol of the dragon, and then the Dragonborn music, the theme song.
This little fella is, right?
Glad Affleck pays cash. Affleck! Ha! Isn't major?
And surely when a big G fan hears one of their favorite kaiju roars, it must make their eyes light up with excitement at the very least, right? And how could we forget about possibly the most memorable of them all?
Oh.
Hell, even the silhouette of Darth Vader is known worldwide and what it represents. Or how about when you hear
Halo, right? This is Halo. Oh yeah.
I'm confident many Halo fans immediately thought back to gaming on a couch with one of their buddies. You see, one or many of these examples added up are sure to create a memorable experience. And that's exactly what they want. They either want to manipulate you into buying a product using subliminal messages, or they are genuinely trying to create a memorable moment / characters, which in turn sells their products. Let's be honest here though, it's probably a little bit of both. But how does this factor into Skyrim's success? From the very start, Bethesda marketed this game as you being the Dragonborn, the Eater of Dragon Souls, and Savior of humanity. For the first time, the Elder Scrolls series had a face, and most importantly, someone to connect and relate to. And just for further testimony, when writing and editing this part of the video with the Skyrim music, it gave me chills. That has to mean something special. So obviously Bethesda went all out on the marketing, and it paid off big time. But we've seen shady marketing practices before. Practices that were so disingenuous, in fact, that we've been lied to verbally, live on stream, in front of thousands of people. But of course, if Bethesda falsely advertised, I don't think it would have been as well received as it was. And I most certainly wouldn't be here making this video. Evidently, BGS must have done something right with Skyrim, however. It still has a very active community to this very day. Of course, a lot of that has to do with modding, but we'll address that later. The main thing BGS got right with Skyrim, frankly, was the replay value. Skyrim simply would not have survived for as long as it has without a substantial foundation. So let's talk about it.
Oblivion.
Arguably the most important aspect of an Elder Scrolls game is the world in which you play in. It's an
Bleak Falls Barrow, right? Lake Ilinota, right? It still looks beautiful. Yeah, the exploration of this game. I mean, the moment you walked out of Helgen and you are presented with this absolute insane choice to go whatever you want, to do whatever you feel like. The only game that I have been able to get that sort of feeling would be like Fallout 4, when you finally get out of the vault. Little bit of Starfield, not entire, but not as much as Skyrim or Fallout. A little bit of Hogwarts Legacy, absolutely, but nothing compare when you walk out of Helgen for the first time back in 2011.
It's no secret that Bethesda Game Studios is one of the most talented world designers in the gaming industry. Some even believe the world is the true main character of the series, and everything else revolves around it. But with the advancements in technology compared to the earlier entries, it's undeniable that Skyrim may have one of the most immersive virtual worlds of our generation. The scenery and breathtaking vistas, mixed with Jeremy Soul's musical scores, can be downright hypnotic at times. Skyrim does this marvelous job at sucking you in and enveloping you in its world. One moment, you'll be following a quest marker, then the next, you'll be picking flowers and sightseeing from a cliff. Or perhaps you notice a dungeon with a few bandits camped outside, and out of curiosity, you go and investigate the scene, only to find yourself battling hordes of Draugr in an all-new quest line you didn't even know existed just a few moments ago. Fundamentally, this is what the Elder Scrolls is all about. And undoubtedly, Bethesda is aware of this. As with each new entry, they've only improved upon this concept, and have only become more skillful at doing so. Hell, even in Fallout 76, the Appalachian Mountains were undeniably outstanding to look at. Between the improved ambient noises of simply hearing a breeze flow through grass, or a Nirnroot pulsating with its ominous aura, whilst simultaneously hearing water run through a stream next to it. It goes the same with walking through a shopping district and hearing the townspeople chatter about what produce they would like to purchase, while smoke from braziers climb over the walls of the city. All of this is in an effort for you to be completely immersed in this fantasy world. And as our Lord and Savior Todd Howard would say,
all of this just works. It's not, I'm not kidding.
Meme aside, it really is true, and more so when it comes to Skyrim. No longer will you be wasting your time trying to backtrack your way out of a dungeon like in the older games. Old school fans may argue this point, saying it makes the dungeons feel like amusement park rides. But I disagree. For me, it's like dying to a boss in Dark Souls, then having to run all the way back for the battle to commence again. Plainly put, it's insufferable. Skyrim also upgraded the amount of locations and treasures to discover while on your journeys, making exploration far more engaging. I say upgraded because it was likely due to hardware limitations at the time. The coolest part about this to me is, even after 4,500 hours of gameplay, I'm still somehow discovering fascinating details and loot in places I never knew about. That there, my friends, is a sign of a well-crafted open-world RPG. There is a tremendous amount of replay value. This is another reason why Skyrim is so low.
I'm sorry, I just want to point out that have you seen that mod where they merged that chat GDP, I think it was called, alongside with voice AI? So you, to the NPCs in Skyrim, like you can ask them anything. You have to look it up. Look up Skyrim voice AI. You have to. Like it's a game changing. Yeah, it's a game changing again. That's from Skyrim, even though it's probably been in other video games. But I saw it first in Skyrim. I was like, it's a mod, by the way. It's insane. Like next generation of video games better have some sort of AI generator, voice generator. It's amazing. You look it up, please. Do yourself a favor. Look up Skyrim voice AI NPCs. It's insane. Like, if that sort of technology can be implemented in Skyrim, a 12-year-old game, it's a possibility for the next open world game.
Loved. However, I thought I'd mention, as great as the gameplay loop truly is, there are a few major problems. One being that the currency, or otherwise known as gold septims, has very little meaning in Skyrim. By the time you're level 20, you can pretty much afford anything you'd like to have. Aside from buying all the houses all at once, there isn't anything in the game you need a large sum of money for. In contrast to Oblivion, there were unique enchanted items that some merchants would sell for a large price. Granted, not all worth buying, but some definitely were. It's just another thing to potentially spend your gold on, instead of having 20 grand in your pocket at any given moment. And don't get me started on the Prowler's Profit perk you get from completing the Stones of Baron Zaya quests. It just straight up breaks the damn game. You'll be drowning in gems to sell to merchants. And if you sell the items with the fast travel meta, you can just fast travel in a rotation all around Skyrim to sell your gems, if somehow you do manage to become broke. This meta will fix your problem in about 10 minutes, moving at a snail's pace. And this brings us to the NPCs. Now, before I speak about the NPCs, there is one element we all need to understand before moving on. This game is approaching 12 years old, and I've played some great open world games during these 12 years. So it would be naive to compare it to games that are far younger. To some of you, it's almost as if I just told you the sky is blue. But unfortunately, I've seen people undermine Skyrim's greatness while comparing it to games that are much newer. At face value, all NPCs are highly immersive. They wake up, eat, work, sit around, then sleep.
Like, even though there was a little bit of that in Oblivion as well, but back then it's kind of like the fundamental stones, I think it's called, for modern day RPG games. For NPCs, basically, for most of the time, it's amazing.
Of course, others deviate from this pattern, but in simplistic terms, this is essentially what most of them do. This is otherwise known as Radiant AI, which is a technology firstly developed by, you guessed it, Bethesda Softworks.
Sorry for that, my phone was ringing, so I was forced to answer it. Let's keep going.
To briefly summarize what Radiant AI actually means, I'm going to play a clip for you.
They're gonna react to...
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Excuse me, are you all right? By the divines, this person's dead.
Basically, NPCs will react to whatever is around them in numerous ways, some good and some really bad. Radiant AI was first developed for Oblivion, then later expanded on in Fallout 3, then Skyrim, and of course afterwards, Fallout 4. Unfortunately for Oblivion, however, Radiant AI was disastrous in test demos because all the NPCs would start killing each other. It would go something like this. A thief would steal from an NPC would cause a commotion, guard would notice said commotion, therefore he would track down the thief, then proceed to confront the thief. And since Bethesda didn't add an option for NPCs to pay bounties, there would be no other option besides killing said thief. So obviously, this got quite out of hand for Bethesda. Nonetheless, this still led to some highly comedic moments in Oblivion. But how does this tie into Skyrim though? Well, you see, Radiant AI is still very much a thing in Skyrim, besides a few glaring problems that were somehow not fixed. And armed with this knowledge I just bestowed upon you, you probably realize the issues as well. An easy issue to pick apart would be when walking past NPCs in any town or village in Skyrim, they will almost always, without fail, either start spilling their life story in long tangents, or just trauma dump the shittiest information on you you've probably heard in the last week. The obvious issue is, nobody in their right mind would do this to a complete stranger, and this happens all the time throughout a Skyrim playthrough, and can be very immersion breaking. This is exactly how these infamous memes were spawned in the first place.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
I should reiterate.
God, that sentence, I mean, it broke the internet. It must have broken some servers at the internet.
Though I do personally think Radiant AI fits the Elder Scrolls series, although I respect opposing arguments against it. Probably the strongest argument I've seen is the fact it takes lots of tedious work to script out all these NPCs, consequently wasting valuable time that could be better spent elsewhere. For example, in The Witcher 3, there are a vast amount of NPCs, but they aren't very intricate. They pretty much only serve the purpose of populating cities and creating the illusion of a bustling city. And this isn't a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. That's because it works. Moreover, this is something Bethesda struggles to accomplish, since the developers meticulously
The music of The Witcher is also really good. Oh, so good.
design every single NPC. Both design philosophies have their pros and cons. So the real question is, should Bethesda take this approach? Honestly, I'm open to both sides, and I don't really know what the best route would be to take here. Nonetheless, fixing Skyrim's most common Radiant AI issues would be a simple fix in my opinion. Just shut the NPCs up every now and then. Better yet, if an NPC gets to know you, then they tell you how their daughter was brutally tortured, then murdered by a group of bandits, rather than just laying all the information on a complete stranger. As I see it, the main storyline in Skyrim has aged the worst out of the 3 Elder Scrolls games. While Skyrim's main questline isn't bad by any measure, it does not hold a candle to Morrowind and Oblivion. Although Morrowind had minimal dialogue,
I would say, for my opinion, Fallout 4 main quest, it's good. Absolutely. Much better than Starfield, in my opinion. Morrowind or Oblivion. I would say Oblivion is a little bit more interesting story. Main story. I'm only talking main story right now. Morrowind's. I am one of those. I don't care about the Dark Elf. I find their culture and their way of life and the backstory way too boring, in my opinion. Too convoluted, too complicated. I'm a Scandinavian. I'm with the Nords. I'm not a racist Nord, but I'm more like, I don't like, who cares about philosophizing and that sort of thing. Let's get our hands dirty. So yeah, I would say Skyrim has a very iconic main quest. I would find it actually pretty fun and that sort of thing. Much more fun than Morrowind, and way more interesting. But Fallout 4, I would definitely say that Skyrim's main quest is better than Fallout 4 and much better than Starfield.
I still found it to be quite engaging. It was notably rewarding after defeating Dagoth because all of the NPCs treated you differently afterwards after realizing you were the Nerevarine. I find Oblivion's storyline to be far more impactful than Skyrim's, once more because of the characters you get to know along the way. Martin Septim is a brilliantly written character if you ask me, and by the end when he sacrifices himself to save Tamriel, it hurts that much more. Sadly, Skyrim's story didn't leave that much of an impact on me. Aside from Paarthurnax, I didn't find any of the characters.
Yeah, Paarthurnax was one of the best, if you want to call him character, but yeah, we're gonna call him character. Yeah, he was definitely one of the best characters in the game. I wanna cut the head off Delphine. The blades. I will never trust the blades.
Characters to be distinctly interesting. As a matter of fact, I found a few to be quite aggravating, with no real payoff, particularly Delphine. Sometimes it's okay to write a character to be irritating upon first meeting them. Then once you get to know them, they begin to grow on you. Arya from the Mass Effect games is a perfect example of this. I found Delphine to always act like an asswipe, regardless of the situation. Admittedly, she's highly intelligent, as intended by the writers, and her character's writing reflects that. However, I never felt any real friendships blossom throughout the storyline. Truthfully, aside from my very first playthrough,
more like hatred.
Every new playthrough I've had, I've always dreaded questing through the main campaign because of this issue. There's nothing that is satisfying that keeps me hooked. But with 4,500 hours of time clocked into the game, maybe that's to be expected. But the story in my eyes simply isn't cut from the same cloth previous entries were. All in all though, I find the main questline to be quite anticlimactic. The final battle wasn't nearly as bombastic as it should have been. Nevertheless, after defeating Alduin, there isn't any world-altering changes to make it seem like you just saved the world from the World Eater. The game just kinda moves on. In this aspect, I feel the other games handle this in a much better fashion.
Yeah, like in Oblivion you will notice there's some difference. Well, not humongous different in the landscape, but you would definitely see a little bit new dialogues, and you see a little bit of the effects of the gate portals and that sort of thing. Skyrim, the only thing that you can see a little bit different are the dragon graves and that sort of thing that's been open and that sort of thing. Not open, but uncovered and that sort of thing. Yeah, it feels like the Civil War had a little bit more better handling that sort of thing. When you attack different capitals, you will see destruction and other sort of damage to the nearby houses and that sort of thing afterward. But it would have been a little bit more better if you could see a little bit more destruction or after the dragons, that sort of thing, with burned corpses or caravans that's been attacked or that sort of thing. Like something, at least something. So yeah, he's a little bit right there, that they didn't feel like you didn't save humanity from all this destruction that's supposed to be happening, but
Oblivion's way to display the impact you left on the world was to show you all the Oblivion gates
like
collapsing after Martin Septim faced off against Mehrunes Dagon and defeated him after breaking the Amulet of Kings and transforming into Akatosh himself. And as a nice cherry on top, Martin left behind the Avatar of Akatosh statue that you can always visit after completing the main story. Morrowind's unique way of showing the importance of your actions after completing the main questline is by shifting the way almost all NPCs interact with the player. Rather than disregarding the player, they will begin to treat you with major significance after learning you are the Nerevarine. In Skyrim, none of this really happens, besides maybe a few guards lending you praise and Paarthurnax giving you an honorable speech. Unfortunately, this is one of Skyrim's weaker points compared to games prior. The way factions work in Skyrim is another major gripe I have. Then after I got a little older, I began playing the originals. And boy is there a major difference. I'm not really sure what exactly went wrong here. I wouldn't exactly call it a catastrophe, but it's damn near close. In fear of making this segment unnecessarily long, I'll give you the main issues with all of Skyrim's factions. Before all else, it's essential I get one thing out of the way. A problem that is so bad in fact, it makes Skyrim look elementary. There are no restrictions on what factions you can join whatsoever, despite player history. I made the example earlier in the video of murdering a whole village and still being able to march all the way to Solitude, the capital of Skyrim, and join the Imperial Legion. This is unacceptably immersion breaking. This is a 12-year-old video game, and it would have taken lots of hands on deck to script all the nuances of the situations the player may cause in the environment. It's likely Bethesda was aware of this problem, but after weighing the pros and cons of not fixing this, they decided to allocate resources to the contrary instead. However, admittedly, this is likely a factor of Skyrim's success. Being able to play as a psychotic Dark Brotherhood assassin, while simultaneously being labeled as the hero of Skyrim, puts far less restrictions on the player without having to start a new character all over again, just to roleplay as the bad or good guy. I realize this and understand the concept greatly. Despite that, I feel it would do the next Elder Scrolls game wonders if they implemented some sort of mild restrictions, such as having to prove yourself to the townspeople, or even proving yourself to the bad guys if you do too many good deeds for the townspeople. This was just a fast, digestible example, obviously, but hopefully it got the point across. This scenario could be applicable to just about any faction, i.e. Dark Brotherhood or an Honorable Fighters Guild, etc. Even with this aside, we still aren't done with the issues Skyrim has in terms of writing. Aside from the Dawnguard questline, which I find personally to be one of the most fulfilling factions in the series, every single one of Skyrim's factions are clearly inferior in terms of story writing when in comparison to Morrowind and Oblivion. Firstly, let's get the Dawnguard factions out of the way. I think they are amazingly well written, and I'll say Serana is definitely a contender for best characters in all of Elder Scrolls. The friendship you form with her is next to none with with any of the characters in Skyrim. It's almost a quality as high as friendships in the Mass Effect series. Unfortunately for the player, however, Serana isn't marryable. Without drawing the section out much longer, up front, I'll say all of the writing for the rest of the factions in Skyrim is absolutely terrible. Morrowind's were pretty good from what I remember, but in Oblivion, the writing was on a whole other level. The characters, the plot, the build-up, and all the twists and turns along the way were absolutely magical. It really felt like you were climbing the ranks in the guilds, whether you were a novice spellcaster or a rookie assassin. The progression felt really organic. Contrarily, Skyrim's writing is lackluster at best and unfulfilling at worst, not to mention a few plot holes we won't bother getting into. In Skyrim, half of the time you don't even feel like a student at the College of Winterhold or a thief in the Thieves Guild because you're just allowed to slaughter endless bandits in the Thieves Guild, which contradicts their code. Even Vex says,
"When a client needs us to eliminate another, we don't operate like the Dark Brotherhood. We find alternate means to get them out of the way."
Meanwhile, bandits aren't very much different from Thieves Guild members. Both groups are pretty much just thugs, so this logic doesn't make much sense to me. Oblivion's Thieves Guild had this issue under much more control by focusing more on the thieving aspect and being sneaky. Also, while being a member of the college, you never truly feel like a student mage trying to learn magic when you hardly ever have to cast a spell. It's more akin to feeling like an errand boy slaughtering endless Draugr. If I'm going to be completely truthful with you though, Oblivion struggled with this as well. But at least the storyline was more well written, making it less painful to quest through. Equally annoying as the College of Winterhold issues is that being a blade is much more meaningful in Oblivion, whereas in Skyrim it requires you to kill one of the few most memorable characters, Parthenax. I can't remember the last time I went this route in a playthrough. It was and
I only killed Parthenax once of all the time I played Skyrim. Only once I have killed Parthenax just to see what's happening, and nothing happened after that. It's like no rewards, nothing. Just like, oh, you can now recruit people to the blades and hunt dragons. Like, I want to punch Delphi.
It still is infuriating that there isn't an option to resolve this issue by other means. Or hell, even killing Esbern and Delphine would have been fine by me. I do like Esbern though, so thankfully there are mods to fix this issue, but it seems like this section of the Blade's questline was unfinished. It just seems blatant and brash, especially when there is no option to remove the Parthenax quest from your quest log by siding with the Greybeards instead of the Blades. Furthermore, the end section of the Blade's questline just screams unfinished, and that's unfortunate considering it's attached to some of the most important characters in all of Skyrim. Basically, to summarize, every faction that Skyrim has, Oblivion does better tenfold. I do give credit to Skyrim's Dark Brotherhood questline, however, as it isn't all that bad. I found the ending to be quite dramatic in a good way. Assassinating Tamriel's Emperor was a very bold move by the writers. Side quests in Skyrim tend to be a hit and miss on most occasions, and most of the community would likely agree with this statement. Some quests in Skyrim are some of the best the series has to offer, while other quests are just kind of lame, requiring you to clear out a dungeon full of Draugr to either retrieve an item or save somebody. I don't want to be too harsh on Skyrim's quests, because I genuinely enjoy most of them, but I understand where some people are coming from when they say Skyrim is too repetitive. The Thieves Guild Restoration questline is a prime example of this, requiring the player to complete meagerly tasks that the game randomly generates for you. Undoubtedly, this is the game's biggest weakness with quest design. It makes the player feel they have no impact in the world. Therefore, auto-generated quests like this, and the ones in the Dark Brotherhood, become very stale very fast. On the other hand, I find most of Skyrim's side quests to be great. Some lead you through very exciting twists and turns, and you get to uncover some lost secrets while delving deeper into Skyrim's lore. One of Skyrim's strongest points in terms of quests would definitely be the Daedric quest, hands down. At least, this is the case for me. Each quest has a meaning behind them and displays the characteristics and personality traits of each Daedric prince very well. That's not to say the games prior didn't. I just think Skyrim managed to do it better. Most of the Daedric quests still leave an impact on me to this day. I find them to be highly memorable in most cases. However, with all that said, if you were to ask me which Elder Scrolls game had the best quest overall, I would have to say Oblivion wins. Skyrim's side quests are fine, but Oblivion consistently had very well-written side quests, whereas Skyrim's was far more sporadic. I should say, in my opinion, definitively, Oblivion wins in quest design.
So here is where I have to end part 1 of the reaction. It's halfway through. Remember, it's a very long video, so I'm going to cut it in 2 parts. So if you want to stick around and see the next one, which probably coming out a couple of days from now. So yeah, thank you all for watching so far. I have linked the original video if you want to see it, and also go and sub to Fustorf. Still a little bit unsure on the pronouncing there, but yeah. Hope you all have a good time, everybody, and see you next time for part 2.